hello to everybody who stuck with us for these wonderful chit chats. I don't know what episode we're on. My friend Drew, television and film composer extraordinaire, tells me we were on episode 9.
It is episode 9.
Which means we may be coming to the end of the season.
Indeed. And I can't decide whether we put ourselves out to fallow for a little bit, as some of the shows that we're going to talk about, or whether we just dive straight into season 3.
Well, I will say something which I say to a lot of my mentees and people in general, that very famously, and this quote could be attributed to one or two amazing, famous composers, but I always refer to Mozart, who said words to the effect that the rest notes are as important as the notes themselves. And you will you will appreciate that.
Very true. I always say, and we're going to go off on a tangent immediately, but I always say whenever I'm talking to a director or a producer about music in a show, I always say, why is there music here? I love silence. The tension that's created by somebody talking or somebody not talking is so powerful, especially if there's music either side of it. I love the spaces in between.
Well, that's I find that absolutely fascinating, and I think it's wonderful that, listen, kids, we've had firsthand from the horse's mouth exactly why there should be pauses. Take a beat, and I mean that in life, but specifically, I know exactly what you're referring to. Anything that's engrossing you can sometimes be spoilt by some noisy racket.
Totally. And which brings me actually very neatly into another aside. I don't know if you saw this. I'm a little late to this, a couple of weeks old. There was a recent interview with Russel Brand on, so you are aware of what I'm going to talk about, the Russel Brand interview with Piers Morgan, where Piers asked him about a quote from the Bible that he used, I think, to calm his nerves in court when he was up on some rather serious charges. And as we're not very political podcast, we won't go into all of that nastiness, but I'm sure everyone's aware. And this clip has gone viral. It is wonderful. You've seen it, have you? Where he basically is looking through the Bible,
flicking through a well-used Bible and
trying to find the quote. And Piers, for once, does a brilliant job of just sitting there quietly, and it goes on for what feels like forever. It's only a minute or so, but it feels like forever, and it's silent apart from the noise of the studio, and the studio has got this incredible kind of like hum going on. It's worth watching just to hear it. And again, that's something, if you had music going through that, it wouldn't feel as long, it wouldn't feel as awkward. It is wonderfully awkward.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, to stress, this is an apolitical space, a safe space.
Worth saying that before we launch into our next conversation.
I was just to say, however, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't proffer some kind of opinion. Hell, that's what I'm paid for, I think, and in this wonderful world. So, yeah, I mean, I get very hot and cold on Piers Morgan. I like him at the moment for that very reason, and obviously I have an intense dislike for Russel Brand.
I loathe Piers Morgan as well, but he does sometimes get it right.
Isn't it weird? I mean, who'd want to be in the public eye?
Absolutely,
people like us commenting.
Well, and I mean, we're just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we are just the amount of flack you get for putting yourself forward with an opinion.
Well, one thing I do, hand on my heart, one thing I never do is criticize anybody in writing by dint of posting anything. I post, as you know, to promote this podcast, and I post sometimes on my Insta other fun things. But I would never, and this is why I don't understand, the whole, I mean, I would never, I'm too scared that someone would come out of a dark corner and get me. But I just think it's the most incredible that you're motivated. The notion that you're motivated to call someone names at arm's length is just so hilarious to me.
Yeah, I find it bizarre. And I guess maybe because we are used to mixing with celebrities, with people who are very successful. Maybe we're used to, and also older, so we used to a one-on-one interface with people where, if you say something, you might get decked.
Yeah.
It's, I think, the younger generation and also the general public who aren't familiar with celebrities and don't mix in those circles maybe feel a very different way about when they're posting on these comments.
We should just spend a couple of minutes on this. It does kind of it does.
Although I can't wait to get onto Eurovision. So
Okay, I'll be very brief. But I think there was a sea change, and it happened very quickly that all of a sudden the great unwashed could have an opinion. I mean, I remember in years past, and I've got to stop recalling these, when you would have Points of View, which is a television program with people would write in hard copy letters. And I think there's still, I know there's a news program that does review of the news. The BBC has covered, I can't remember what it's called.
And Vox Pops have been around a long time.
Yeah, but then the notion that, it's free for all, it's open season on anyone or anything. And I think as part of my job, and I have certainly had to endure this and deal with this, is crippling anxiety with some clients because they read the comments, and that's a real thing. And you've got to be very comfortable and confident and saying, for God's sake, don't read it.
What sort of age range are these clients that are finding it? Are they slightly older? The reason I ask is because my kids are online a lot, and they seem to have a very robust attitude towards being rage baited, towards trolling. They don't care. And it's really interesting because you would think that kids are going to be really super sensitive. You hear lots of stories about kids getting bullied online. Obviously, I'm not talking about hardcore bullying here. I'm just talking about negative comments. But they don't seem to care.
Well, I think that's good, and that means they probably won't qualify being an artist or entertainer in any way, shape, or form. Because in my experience,
they're too well adjusted.
Yeah, your kids have been brung up proper, and thankfully, as I think hopefully mine are. Although my youngest is in the public domain, and I do hope she doesn't read everything, because I'm sure there will be horrendous things. But I mean, talent in general is super sensitive. And I think it's part of the biological makeup of performers that you've got to be pretty hardcore to just not give, or be incredibly successful not to give a monkeys about it all.
Yeah.
But I must admit that going back, the Russel Brand thing was highly amusing, and really, I mean, I rest my case, my lord. A lot of guys are burnt.
Yeah, well, and probably much more, but it's not for us to judge. Good. Moving on from that before we get sued. Eurovision. I think this is going to be part of a little sequence about things we talked about before, where we talked about, should things be put out to fallow? Should we have a little break from things? There are a lot of returning series, a lot of returning festivals, etc., etc. We talked about the fact that Glastonbury has a need to actually not be
Reconstitute
exactly
the ground, quite literally.
Yeah, and metaphorically that does apply to a lot of TV shows. Let's talk about Eurovision quickly, because it is a shit show right now.
I mean, I hate to say I told you so. I mean, if the listener
Who saw that coming?
The listener wants to review, I can't remember which episode.
All of them.
All, yeah. I launch into Eurovision most and every week at least. Look, it got out of hand for many reasons, and world events, I would have thought, have made it pretty much impossible. And as has been played out this very week, there's been some fairly controversial incidents, I think, in the semi-finals.
Yeah, and a lot of countries now have boycotted it. So Spain isn't going to be showing it. Ireland's going to be showing Father Ted.
Yes,
which is,
I mean,
comes with its own ironies.
when we check
Controversies around Grey and Linen.
Indeed. Again, we are apolitical, but we can be apolitical. And again, do some sense checking here, guys. Why
Yeah.
aren't they reading the room?
Yeah.
One of the things that I picked up on that, it was a press story, so I don't know, is that the replacement presenter that the BBC had to do pretty damn quick, it is alleged that they have made some comment which doesn't fit and may indeed be perceived as political. I mean, very difficult.
I think we can talk about this quite easily without getting into the politics of Israel and the conflict over there, because actually, for me, it's really simple. I think you've got to look at the governing board who are running Eurovision and go, what's the decision-making process that you're following here? Because you're making a picture of it. You're getting it wrong quite clearly. You've got, I think, currently 5 countries boycotting. Might even be
Something like that.
6.
Yeah.
I mean, that's shambolic and it's catastrophic. I mean, they need to just not run the show. But it's on Saturday and we're currently recording this on Thursday. It's in 2 days' time. It's happening. So,
Well, I mean, I don't know why they have persisted, but ultimately it's going to be agreed. There'll be somebody or bodies or a body that is looking at a huge amount of income based on broadcasting and all the little ecosystems and microeconomies. And the reason we're discussing this is because of the notion of taking a break, having a year off, guys, and actually let's take a break and review.
take a break and look at your rules. I mean, for example, they've changed the voting rules now because there have been accusations that Israel manipulated the votes to come second last year. I don't quite know how they would have done that. Why would that happen? Well, you give people 20 votes. They've now changed it to 10 per person. Why? As you say, greed, because you want them to pay 10 times to vote. That's why you're doing it. You're not doing it because it's fair. Otherwise, you'd give one person one vote. It's an organizational thing. You don't need to do it that way. They're choosing to do it that way because it raises more revenue.
And, it really does taint and besmirch what was a really joyful, celebration.
Completely.
And that, I think, is going to take some rebuilding.
It is, because the whole point was it was a post-war coming together of Europe.
Yeah.
And
And Australia got I suppose, a wild card, and I think they've been in it ever since,
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Yeah.
Look,
there are lots of there's quite a vague sort of thing, but it's about Western nations coming together.
totally. Look, I love the concept. I just have real issues with the execution and the way it's been produced in the last some years.
I think the management needs to take a long, hard look at themselves and go, what are we doing wrong here? Because we're clearly doing something wrong. And if they don't think they're doing something wrong, then we're in real trouble.
I think there were issues in the crowd. I think there's been some.
Yeah, they had to pull someone out of the crowd.
Yeah, and I think then there are safety issues. It's a very.
Eurovision should not be in a position where you're having to remove people from the crowd because they're chanting political slogans during a song. That is really sad. It goes against everything that Eurovision is about. And they have to take responsibility for creating that scenario, that possibility.
Yeah,
It's not the person who's chanting the political slogans. It's the fact that you've created a highly charged political forum.
That was the expression, highly charged, like a tinderbox, and that's why I would worry for this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's really sad. And I believe last year there was a controversy around when the Israeli entry was performed around overdubbing of cheers and things to drown out crowds booing, which again, it's the tail wagging the dog.
Well, the fact that technology like anti-booing tech is being mentioned, even spoken about, to me, it really sums up where we are. It's a mess.
Yeah,
it's a mess, and they should have taken my advice over the last several months and let me organise the entire show, but certainly cancelled it to this year.
Yeah, I agree entirely. It's just very disappointing for something that actually we both really love. It's a really joyous show and really joyous occasion, and a shame that it's being ruined by the fact that they can't work out what to do politically. I'm not saying it's easy, but as you say, the easy solution is just cancel it for this year, and then
Take a break and review.
yeah, and then sit down with all of your rules and regulations and
And I
change them.
recall again, but it's interesting that this particular story is still whirling around. I think I said the same with Strictly Come Dancing, BBC's flagship show, new presenters being hired, and a lot of negative publicity around the show in the last 2 years.
Quite a lot of scandals.
Compared to a lot of scandal compared to the last 20 odd years when it's been the perfect show, really. I would have said, you know what? And I love the fact that Ireland is showing a Father Ted film. You know, Strictly should have taken a year off and they should have shown some films. Get your presenting team right. But, you know, I believe they have elected half of the presenting team. But you know, this is coming around. It's June that they'll be out there with stories of contributors. So I would have had taken a rest.
Yeah.
And you know, get it right. The problem, and this is a theme, is that networks and rights holders are loath to take anything out of the schedules for a year, and it is an element of greed, desperation. I mean, that's
both. Yeah,
that's one of the
it's about money, and it's about the fear that money won't come back.
Yeah, and this is not the right time for the BBC to be farting around with their scheduling and risking something. I predict that they will not get the presenter right. It's a little bit like Premiership football managers that are so disposable these days, and I wouldn't be at all surprised.
I mean, Premier League football managers and prime ministers.
And
Who
again,
to be either.
We are an apolitical podcast.
We are, but actually, I was thinking about this this morning before we started, and I was thinking, actually, being a prime minister or a manager of a football club is actually still really showbiz in a lot of ways.
Oh, I don't disagree, and it's funny because I was thinking about that in terms of how quickly we become intolerant of anything. You know, talk about soundbite, and it's a quick cut society. I mean, the poor fella, I can't remember his name, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who's only had a couple of years. People are bored. I'm sorry, mate. It's probably nothing. I'm sure you're a really nice fella, but he's been there. He seems to have been there a while. Let's get rid.
I think it's appalling. I mean, I have plenty to say about his leadership over the last couple of years, but changing leader right now is the wrong solution. I just cannot see how that is going to help the country.
But was it one of the things that I understand to be the case, that he was not relating to the electorate, or the the man on the street weren't relating to him, and I'm thinking, well, okay, we are
Unlike Boris Johnson.
Well, it's like, okay, because you're flicking, I suppose, in society. Oh no, I'm bored of him, poor fella. Keir Starmer's his name, yeah. Oh no, come on, let's try something new and shiny. I think it's a worry that we are that disposable.
Two things that one of my swimming buddies was telling me over the last few mornings. He's a civil servant and works in investments, and it's really interesting. He was saying two things. One is that we were known as a nation that was very stable and secure, and so we could secure investment internationally. Much harder now, because I wouldn't say we're quite a laughing stock, but we're not taken very seriously. We've got through a lot of prime ministers, probably about to burn through the 6th in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like that. And the other thing that someone said to me actually this morning, which I thought was really interesting, was they blamed Have I Got News for You for making Boris Johnson a bit of a lovable rogue, a bit of a lovable sort of buffoon, and the fact that they have a habit of bringing on people who maybe have an opportunity to improve their perception with the public in a way that otherwise they wouldn't. You're looking skeptical.
No, I'm interested. That's a fascinating bit there. this is a panel satirical news quiz show, right?
Yes.
So
And they're pretty tough on their guests.
they are.
But it's quite chummy too.
Yeah,
Again, quite apolitical whilst being a very political show.
I think if you go on anything like that, if you go on, you have got to be incredibly aware and thick-skinned that you can be absolutely torn apart.
I think the only person they completely tore apart was that Angus Dayton when he was found to be
Enjoying the intimate company of
a couple of ladies and a bag of unidentifiable white stuff.
I mean, honestly, okay. He was very funny. I must admit. Wonder what he's doing now.
So you were talking to me earlier in the week about clipping and what that is. What was that about?
Well, the listener will know that we try to promote this podcast using clips, and that's a very sensible approach.
So clips on TikTok and Instagram.
Short video clips. Let's give it its anyway. It is suggested that media, the world that we inhabit, is based on, and the success is based on short clips, is what I'm trying to say. And there are companies now specifically designed, probably using software, but earning a great deal of money, turning longer form vehicles into clips. And it's a clip. It clips are driving business, and brands are now jumping on clips, and that's the way of the world.
That's really interesting because to me that sort of feels like it's been happening anyway with TikTok, because that's what TikTok is. That's what Insta Reels are, etc. But I guess the difference in what you're talking about is podcasts, for example, or vodcasts. People not actually watching the whole thing or listening to the whole thing, but actually getting all the information they want just from the clips.
I would posit that 80% of our audience just looks at the clips.
Which reminds me that I need to do some more. And the reason I mention that is because I actually have some AI tools that I can use for creating them, but I've found them to be disappointing, and I'm sure they'll get better over time, but I tried them to see if it would save time. So I've got a thing where I can upload the whole video, and then I can type in a prompt that says, find me 6 funny clips, and export them in a vertical format, portrait format, and it will do it. But it doesn't do it very well, and it doesn't do what I want.
So here's the interesting thing, and I hope that folk who are listening, do listen. That AI has its place. It's inevitable. It's here to stay. All the usual,
and it's getting incrementally better every day.
Look, AI is here. Love it or hate it, it's here. I think that which you have just said, that having done something through an AI process and looked at it, I think most of the time I'm a bit disappointed. Another example is that one of my clients is a children's author, and as an experiment, he put one of his Easter Bunny books through an AI process. I don't know which particular app it was, and he sent it to me. And
what did he do with it? So he'd already written it.
We had the copy, and I think fed it in and said create the imagery and create the graphics. Actually, we'll show it to you, but it was very. I was disappointed because it was so perfect. The images were so perfect. You could tell immediately. It was, and I actually said, I think we should delete this. I don't want this to be circulating in our creative thought process. And I don't know if people can relate to that, but I would, I'm always urging a little bit of caution, AI in general. But I've been disappointed.
I have too, and I'll give you another example with the vodcast. I edit this after we finish recording it, as you know, and I have the option to do an automatic edit where it detects who's speaking, and it can either do it by audio or it can actually just look to see if your mouth is moving. which is pretty clever, and it will just cut to whoever's speaking. And that's great. It does work. I just don't love it. And sometimes it gets a little bit wrong, and then I have to watch the whole thing through and check. I just prefer to go through it. So I just do it manually. I go through, we're pretty much real time. I try not to edit too much out, as you know. So pretty much what we say is what you're going to hear.
Yeah.
And I just cut out something if we really lose the plot or ramble on, or forget what we're talking about. But I find it takes me a little bit longer. I would say if I use the automated process, it probably takes about 10 minutes for the software to work out on a 30-minute video to work out where all the cuts are and do the edits. For me to do it manually, it's taking me about 2 hours roughly to edit this 30-minute thing. I don't know why. I mean, I'm not particularly slow, and I've got key commands set up so I can just literally press a key between each of us, so on the fly. But I have to keep rewinding and just checking things. I sometimes have to change and edit. Sometimes I'll cut to a noddy. I'll try and do one now. So if you're nodding, I'll cut to a noddy. And obviously in the industry, we tend to use those to cut an edit, to cover an edit. But actually, I tend to use them just to get a reaction, because I think it's quite boring looking at one person for.
I think that brings it right back down to the reality of what we're dealing with, that you can do something in 10 minutes, which normally takes you 2 hours.
Yeah. And I would argue that, and please tell us in the comments, I'd love to hear, I suspect that for the audience, A, they wouldn't notice,
No.
and B, they probably think this is really badly edited. So
That's right.
I've done it the way I like it, but I mean, arguably it would be better if it was done by AI.
Well, that's AI for you.
But I also think, come back in 6 months, and I suspect that process will be so refined that it will be actually ridiculous to spend 2 hours manually editing something that is only two people talking.
I mean, I think the really worrying, concerning, and somewhat sad thing is that genuine creators who perhaps have written a song, you'll only get the I call it the Zara Larsson effect, where you've got that 20 seconds of chorus and dance, and that's it. And that's a kind of worry for me. And people who are beautiful writers, and part of reading a well-written book, a well-written novel, is staying with it and really seeing it out.
I was talking to a friend of mine about this last week, and we were talking about the new Charlie XCX song, Rock Music, and I had to confess, I said I liked it, and I had to confess that I'd only heard clips of it. I hadn't heard the whole thing. And she said to me, "Oh, it's great, you've got to listen to the whole thing." So I came back and I listened to the whole thing. It's about 30 seconds long. It's about 1 minute 50 or something, but it's so short.
The song,
Yeah, the
in its
song, there's
entirety.
nothing to it. I mean, it is, I mean, she's great, and I love her stuff, and it's a vibe, and it works. But there's just so little to it. It's almost like it was written to be a clip.
Oh my goodness me!
But I think that's how the kids are writing now.
That is a question to pose.
Yeah, and I mean, if you are over, let's say 40, I'm going to say, but it could be 30, you probably think a pop song should be 3 minutes long, because that was kind of the radio edit that we used to do. And most of the people certainly under 30, know that after the first minute, you get paid the same on Spotify. So they're just writing 1 minute, 2 minute pieces of music. They're writing really short songs.
We should just let's stop on that, and let me ask you. So you're saying Spotify only pay up to a minute?
They just pay for the play.
Oh,
They're not paying by the minute.
as soon as it's registered,
Yeah.
which takes a minute.
Which takes
I mean, that's really interesting. So Charlie XCX, one of the best songwriters on the planet right now, yeah?
Well, one of the most interesting, yeah.
Right?
And contemporary.
Hugely, guess say contemporary. She's written a pop song that's sub 2 minutes.
Well, let me just double check that for you, but
I'm always fascinated with this, because
it's 1 minute 55.
1 minute 55 for a pop song. That is Elvis length. And I say that because Elvis's biggest hits were all in and around 2.5 minutes.
20, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
absolutely.
you used to have the American fade.
Yeah.
At the end, it would just carry on, and you just
Yeah.
straight
And
out.
anything over 3 minutes 30, you know, I can remember
And
having.
what was the reasoning for that? Because that was the rise of popular music radio, presumably?
Yeah, well, absolutely, it was all about
Or
radio.
was it just because they couldn't write anything longer? Because then
No, no, no,
success?
no, you must be joking. It was absolutely rock and roll 1950s and the birth of, you know, pop music on radio, because they had to get their timings in and out, you know, soap adverts, you know,
Right.
and so that's why these 3-minute pop records, 3 minutes 20. Then you'd have some, you know, people like, dare I say it, a Dire Straits record or a George Michael record
Yeah.
that were, you know, you could banging on 4, 5, and 6 minutes in
I
some
remember
cases.
hearing Dire Straits' Private
Yeah.
Investigations when it came out in 1981.
I was gonna say 81, but
I'm going to go for 81 and correct me if I'm wrong. And I remember hearing that on the radio when I was having my breakfast before going to school and thinking, wow, this is amazing, because it was so cinematic for its
how'd
time.
they get away with that?
I don't know. Well, because they were Dire Straits. And it was, I don't know, was it 8 minutes or 5 minutes? It was bloody long.
I can remember constantly, and in Europe, it was even harder. If you threw out to the European territories a long pop song, they'd come back and say, well, we're going to edit it ourselves. You wouldn't. Sometimes I can remember, I don't know which artist it was, but on more than one occasion, the radio edit, the record label did it themselves. The artist didn't even do it. And, you know, God forbid you were touring or in a country and they were playing the radio edit. And, you know, I had some rather grouchy pop star run at the back of the bus and say, I've just heard my effing song, and they cut off the best bit.
As an aside, and I don't know if this is still going on, it might be. Do you remember when France decided that French radio had to play a certain quota of
Quotas.
French language
God,
music?
did I ever? I was right in the
I
thick
thought
of
you
that
might have been.
because
I remember hearing Robbie Williams releasing something where he'd actually recorded the chorus in French.
well,
Can't tell you what it was, but
that's an interesting story, and I'll try and be brief. So, certainly when I was up to my neck in international media, radio, print, the way it was working in radios, especially in France, FM radio in France was the big thing, and they would play, you know, 10 songs an hour, let's say, maybe more, but you only had 4 of those English language. The rest had to be French language. So you would have, let's say, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Springsteen, Tina Turner, or whatever, George Michael,
this
whatever,
was probably mid-90s.
mid-90s. So I'm really
So
trying to
a lot of
break.
big international artists.
I'm trying to break British artists like Oasis, Jamiroquai, Des'ree, and you know we couldn't. You know, you were really lucky to get any kind of radio for those artists because you know they're not going to stop playing. And then you know Jackson or Madonna or whomever, you're just you know it was really hard. And then certain artists thought they might try it, as in the case you quote Robbie Williams. There are a couple who tried to do a chorus or something in French.
I think
And
like Kylie might have.
do you know what? It never worked. And also the French record buying public loved British record thing. I don't know where we're now, 2026, whether that still happens. You've got to remember that radio is nowhere near. Talking about radio edits, kids are probably thinking, what the hell is a radio edit? They wouldn't have to consider it. But, you know, because they get their music, you know, on demand,
Yeah.
and it's
Interestingly,
made to measure. It's such a bespoke business.
we spoke a while back about Sienna Spiro, Die on This Hill, and I came to that on social media, and weirdly on social media, the long version of that song was available, and that's what I heard. And then when Radio 1 picked up on it, they did an edit for it, and it was butchered. I mean, they really cut out a bit. I think they cut out the whole second verse or something. And
well, maybe radio edits still exist.
They definitely do. It was really brutal, ruined the song. But I mean, I guess if you hadn't heard the longer version, you didn't mind. And I'm sure if you're Sienna Spiro, you don't mind because you're suddenly getting played on Radio 1. And I noticed that she's on Universal, so I'm guessing that Universal don't mind either because they're getting Radio 1 play. But it's as a musician and a songwriter and an artist, it was pretty awful getting a third of your song cut out just so it will get played on Radio 1.
Yeah, that created a lot of artist relations challenges back in the day, and I will stop saying back in the day. But you know, 'twas ever thus, and I might even stop saying that. Can we please edit that
I
out?
find it impossible to get through a day without saying "'twas ever thus." Another time, I may share the rather sad story of some of the dance remixes that were done of my stuff when I was signed to EMI in the mid-90s. There's plenty to say about that and plenty for us to dissect. I suspect you might have a slightly more sanguine attitude towards it than I did at the time.
Well, no, I mean, you've got to remember that there was a process, and it was so simple, but it was, you know, A&R had done their job, marketing had done their job. We've got a record, we know what it's going to look like, be packaged in, you know, we know what it sounds like, but in order to make sure it sort of touched all bases, your street team would say, "Oh, you need a club mix." And there were, you know, there was fortunes spent, as you know, on your behalf,
Yeah.
getting a mix by, you know, K-Class or Jelly Bean Benitez or,
Well, or generally a mate of the A&R man.
yes,
And it was usually a man.
it usually was. And absolutely it was an A&R man, and absolutely it was a mate thereof. And, you know, you'd stick club mixes out 6 weeks prior to any radio promotion of the single. I mean, we used to stretch these things out. That's what it really is, you know. So we go back to our society being a soundbite, short clip society. My goodness me, we could have the minimum setup period for any record. The minimum is 3 months, and then we used to do way longer than that.
Mm. And I remember my A&R man in, we're talking 1996, 7, saying that they were losing on average £40,000 per single. On average. Obviously they would make on some of them, but they were promotional tools to sell the album and the tour back then. So EMI losing £40,000 in 1996,
That's a lot of money.
30 years ago.
But that doesn't really surprise me. I mean, you know, the marketing spend or the spend in singles, because you got to remember, you would have potentially choreography. You'd certainly need production and video, and I mean, goodness gracious.
But it's worth thinking about when people can be quite bitter about their labels and what they do for them. And I realize that the world has changed a lot in 30 years and labels don't do as much as they did, but they still do a lot of that stuff. And I bet they're still losing a lot of money on tracks. And they're hoping to win big on a few.
True, but I think that data has afforded them a little bit of a cushion, so they don't commit to, you know, gargantuan sums of money, which they used to do, because I was responsible for spending a lot of it. And, you know,
Yeah, and I missed the heyday.
yeah,
I mean, I was
yeah.
on the second or third wave of that where they were spending far less.
Perhaps when we do talk again about things, how sheep mentality in the record business, you know, someone has a boy band, everyone has a boy band, someone has a girl, everyone has a girl band. The landscape is littered with, you know, the bodies, the ailing bodies of ex.
Yeah, I would love to be in some of those boardrooms when those decisions are made. Why don't we have Boyzone, Westlife?
Well, I think there is a tour comprising of some of the blokes out of Boyzone and some of the blokes out of Westlife, and I think it's called Boys Life.
I hope that's right. That's wonderful.
I think I'm right in saying that. I don't know why.
In no way
I don't know why I'm
inspired by
grinning.
McBusted.
Grinning like a. Was it McBusted?
McBusted, McFly, and
my
Busted.
God.
That was brilliant, though. But they were great. They were really good musicians as well. They could actually play. Not
Yeah.
like suggesting that the members of Boyzone and
Well,
Westlife
can't play.
they may well be able to. I don't know that.
That's
a wrap on this
that's
episode.
a funny note to end on. But yeah,
Great. So you've been listening to Riding the Showbiz Wave, episode 9 of series 2, and join us next week for more of the same, or maybe something different.